Welcome to my Taking the Leaps video series on YouTube. Today I want to talk to you about the true strength of positive thinking. I talked about this in my introductory video, how I'm going to focus on positive things and inspirational stories, as well as sharing stories of my life that can influence somebody. So this is the theme of this video I plan to talk about. Hopefully someone will be inspired. For many of you that know me personally, you know I'm very busy. You can tell from my posts. I've been told, even from strangers, that I'm involved in a lot. So I have certain components of my life I just want to share with you. I have the spiritual life, and as I mentioned in the introductory video, I'm a deacon at the Church of Christ at Sunset Boulevard in West Columbia, and I also serve as the finance chairman of that church. As a family man, I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a son, and I'm a brother and uncle. So I'm very involved with my family. So my family keeps me busy as well. My work life, I work as a hospitalist at a Prisma Health Richland. I take care of patients. I admit them, I treat them, I triage them, and diagnose certain disease disorders. My academic life, I am a full-time clinical assistant professor where I do lectures, I mentor students, and create tests and examinations, among other things like participating in councils and other activities within the college. And once upon a time, I also was a student working on my doctorate degree. So each of those components of my life, you have your good days and your bad days. The good days and bad days are inevitable, so you have to find some way to deal with them. One particular way I learned to deal with the good days or the positive days versus the negative days is if one of the components of my life had a positive day and the other components in my life had a negative day, I'll just focus on that positive day, and it'll negate or lessen the impact of the negative day I had in the other component. For example, if I had a bad day at work, like a patient got me mad or a patient got mad at me, but my daughter got honor roll, I can just focus on that fact, and it lessens the impact of the fact of that patient that yelled at me or stressed me out. So that's how I deal with that. So one thing I wondered is what happens if all the components of my life had a negative or not a positive impact, and I had no place else to turn. And this did happen when COVID-19 hit. COVID-19 negatively impacted virtually all the components of my life. I had no component to turn to look for some positivity. So this is a time when I truly had to learn how to harness the power of positive thinking. So in my spiritual life, the negative impact that COVID had was, you know, that as in most places, people were not allowed to gather indoors. And me being a leader in the church, I had to help out and try to figure a way to continue to engage the members. We had to brainstorm quickly and figure out how to get this online programming going. So at the time, we didn't have all the equipment. So we had to just scramble and use what we have. But that alone within itself was very stressful. With my family life, many of you heard my father fell ill with COVID-19, and he eventually passed away. This was a very difficult time because during the time he was sick, I was unable to even travel to New York because of the travel restrictions, and also the fact that I was a healthcare provider taking care of COVID-19 patients. I was not even allowed to travel near the hospital or even see my mother while my father was sick. It was also difficult to get through to the phone lines to kind of get an update on his status. Sometimes it would take several days just to even get a message from a social worker. Another issue I was dealing with was after my father passed, my mother was alone in the house because it was just my father and my mother that were in the house by themselves. My mother just had knee surgery and she was somewhat immobile, and he was a primary caregiver. And that role was completely diminished when he passed away and when he was in the hospital. So that me thinking about that made it very difficult because I knew my mother was alone, and I could not get past that, the fact that I was unable to get home to be able to be of some assistance. In academia, I was working part-time teaching pharmacology for graduate students. And understandably so, the students became increasingly anxious during COVID because I work with a lot of adult learners. So a lot of them have small children. And when their children were at school, that was the ideal time for them to study. However, due to COVID-19, that time was eliminated. So a lot of the students were stressing out because it was impacting their study time, and they were stressing out about getting their assignments done in time and being able to study. So I was getting flooded with emails, phone calls, messages about trying to make adjustments, and I was stressing out because I was trying to stay strong with them. Meanwhile, thoughts of my father were on my mind, so it was very stressful trying to put on a strong persona and not show any weakness in front of my students. Also, I mentioned I was a doctoral student at that time, and this was a stressful time because this was my last semester in the University of South Carolina, and this involved me gathering the data for my final paper, finalizing it, editing it, and preparing it so I can present it so it can be approved or disapproved whether or not I can get my doctorate of nursing practice. So I was dealing with all this at the same time, had nowhere to turn. So this is where I truly understood I had to harness the true strength of positive thinking. Before I decided to shoot this video, I did a little research to help organize my thoughts. And I came across this book, and I never read this book, but it was called The Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Vincent Peale. This book was written in 1952. I was able to see a synopsis of it, and one of the things that stood out to me was a list of 10 rules he had for positive thinking. I'll just discuss the rules that resonated with me, not all 10. One of the rules that resonated with me was the rule that stated, picture yourself succeeding. So that was a good rule to follow, because before I graduated from my doctorate of nursing practice, before I received my degree, I had a wall of diplomas and degrees in my office. I'm looking at them now. I had 4 spots for my diplomas. So far I only had 3. The 4th one was for my doctorate of nursing practice. And of course I didn't have it at the time when we put up these floating frames. But I did put up a piece of paper that said, Future Doctor of Nursing Practice 2020. So whenever I felt down or felt like I couldn't get through the program, I would walk in the office and look at that sign I put and help remind me that I can do it. Also, I would have a mental picture of myself being in an office with my name on the door that says Clinical Assistant Professor, Dr. Dwayne Aline. So whenever I felt down, I would think of that picture, I would think of that frame, that one day I'll have that frame with the real diploma in there, and I'll be sitting in my office with my name outside the door, indicating that I was a clinical assistant professor. So it does work to either have a mental picture or even an actual picture to focus on to maintain positive thinking and a positive attitude. Another rule was think positive thoughts to drown out negative ones. And you heard early in the video how that was my original method. And I had to really dig deep in order to utilize that rule again, since all the components of my life was negatively impacted by COVID-19. So despite the fact that my father is very ill and he passed, and I couldn't see my mother, and I was working in the hospital, and every time I stepped in the COVID-19 room, it reminded me of my father being ill. It was a very difficult time. However, I had to think of the positive side of the situation, the fact that my mother and father were in close proximity, and thankfully that she was never impacted from the virus. She never caught the virus. Also, even though she needed a lot of help, she was able to get by because she had a lot of friends and neighbors that were willing to sacrifice themselves. They came in, dropped food for her. They helped move her things. They always checked on her through the night. They protected her and made sure that nothing would happen to her. So I was able to take comfort in the fact that she had people looking out for her when I couldn't do do what I really wanted to do since I was stuck in South Carolina. So that was a good positive thing to think about. So I was able to drown out the negative thought that my father is really ill and he was likely going to pass, and that the fact that he did pass, that my mother was covered under the protection of her friends, and her faith in God really helped her out. Also, I learned the story of how my resilience during my time as a professor helped other students, because I was having a difficult time trying to show strength and encouragement while my students were having increased anxiety, sending me emails and everything, and I did not want to tell them what was going on. One day I had a student call me, and the student was not confident that they could complete the course because they had a sick family member as well. So I decided to talk to them and try to encourage them. However, you know me, I try to hold a strong voice, but I couldn't hold on to my strength anymore. The student sensed despair in my voice and asked me a simple question: "What's wrong, Professor Aline?" So eventually I told my student what was going on. After my student heard it, the student said, "You know what? You're showing some resilience. You're going through all of that, and I'm worried about what's going on with my family member, and I'm thinking about quitting. You know what? I'm going to press on. And because of you, I'm motivated to do the best I can and succeed in this course." And eventually the student was able to succeed in this course. So I realized that despite how difficult it was, me showing resilience, even though it was very painful, it was not easy, that I impacted another person who was actually going through the same thing I was. So that was a positive thought, and it kept me going through the course. Another rule that was discussed was develop a strong sense of self-respect. You cannot move forward if you don't respect yourself. You cannot achieve anything if you don't respect yourself. Even in your lowest points, you have to find some self-respect so you'll be able to pick yourself up and keep moving. So fortunately, I had a lot of respect for myself and was able to focus on the positive attributes I had and what I could contribute in order to move on. Lastly, draw strength from your faith. I'm a Christian. I draw my strength from my faith in Christ, and I know through all things, nothing is impossible. However, it was very hard to get this mindset. Fortunately, my brothers and sisters in Christ prayed for me. They gave me encouraging words. So it helped me focus and take comfort that if God is with me, who can be against me? So that was a good point that was brought up in the book, and I was glad of my faith was able to get me by. So in conclusion, you must dig deeper to harness the power of positive thinking. Meaning you may have one strategy that may be working for a while, but eventually there'll be a time when you have to switch strategies and dig deeper and understand and harness the strength. Also, ask for help. I'm the type of person that's usually an encourager. I'm not used to being or having the need to be encouraged. So it took a lot of strength from doing that, just to ask for help. It's not a sign of weakness. I learned that the hard way. I openly received the help, and it helped me get by through this difficult situation. And I know I will continue to have difficult situations in life, but the lessons I learned from this situation will be useful so I can be able to handle it a little better. So adjust your attitude, because attitude adjustments can go a long way. So I just want to thank you for listening to this video. I hope you learned something from it. Feel free to share it with anybody that you think may need it. And I'll see you again next week. God bless you all.